The other day, I created a video of Milei warning Trump and other conservative leaders of pitfalls that they could run into. For instance, one of the pitfalls was gradualism. Milei and his team looked at all the reformist governments that used the gradualist approach, and all of them failed miserably. Another warning of Milei's was the chainsaw versus scalpel. The scalpel takes little, precise cuts. The chainsaw just wipes out whole swaths of government programs. I've been pleasantly surprised to see that Trump seems to be following Milei's advice. For instance, he completely seems to be wiping out USAID, which is corrupt through and through, rather than trying to reform it. He's also looking at the corrupt FBI agents that worked on J6 cases and attacked parents who were going to school board meetings, as well as the DOJ, who was involved in the same sort of thing. Plus, he's offered a buyout to all the CIA, which is CIA is a corrupt organization that's caused all sorts of problems around the world. There's also talk of eliminating the Department of Indoctrination, aka the Department of Education. These reforms, if implemented, will be even more than happened under Reagan. So what is Milei's second warning? He's warning that the next step of the globalist deep state will be economic lies. The socialists attempted to discredit Milei and undermine his policies by spreading economic lies, including that they devalued the peso, that this caused the prices to go up, 2, that he increased the money supply and that he increased the public debt, and finally that poverty rate increased under his tenure. Milei's second warning to Trump is that they will try to spread economic lies about him also. They will try to say that Trump increased the unemployment rate because of all the federal workers he laid off. 2, they'll try to say that the economic growth slowed in the first quarter under Trump because he cut federal spending, which is counted as part of the GDP. This is a typical deep state smear job of Javier Milei. Poverty levels are not soaring despite the suggestion of the headline. Milei's popularity is growing, not shrinking, as the article suggests. Was this smear job paid for by the USAID? One wonders. In the article, they say that the country's economic crisis is the worst in 2 decades. It has resulted in unprecedented levels of poverty, which is a lie. The cost of basic food has increased, and now the number of people living in poverty has increased, and that the Milei devalued the peso. All of them are bullshit. Here's another deep state hatchet job by the AP. Notice that it was written in December 2024, which means that the AP is making factual statements that they know is not true. That's called slander. Milei should sue them. Again, one wonders how much the AP got paid to write these scandalous lies. I could show you many more deep state hit pieces against Javier Milei and the result of his economic policies. But I think I've made my point. In this clip, Milei destroys the whole myth that the poverty rate increased under his tenure.
Since the economy hit bottom in March or April, we see that real wages are not only growing because wages earn them at the level of prices, but also in terms of poverty and indigency. We are obtaining very important results. So the point is, and how does it go with poverty? I do not know if you are aware, but today data is published from a study carried out on the basis of the index methodology by the institute that looks at the problems of distribution of income at the University of La Plata, and that are aligned with what the UCA calculated, and that today a Ministry of Human Capital reported. The poverty of the first quarter that was at 54.8%. The date of poverty that was known today is 38.9%. And the indigency that in the first quarter was 20.2% today fell to 8.6%. Therefore, we have demonstrated that the best way to get people out of poverty, the best social plan to get people out of poverty is to exterminate inflation and grow again from the fiscal balance and an orderly monetary policy.
So Milei inherited from the socialist Peronist scumbags poverty rates of 56% and has brought it down in 1 year to 38%. Why is the deep state media not celebrating this? The only possible answer is that they want people in poverty. They want people to suffer. They do not have good intentions. They're evil. In this next clip, Milei explains the intellectual dishonesty of saying he devalued the peso. What he did was make the official exchange rate closer to reality,
Which was neither more nor less than reality. It makes me laugh at the intellectual dishonesty of some saying my law came in devalued, as if the gap didn't exist, and as if a central bank had to blow up reserves. I mean, really, there are people who, I don't know if you don't listen, don't read what they write. You can be so dishonest intellectually, but when you adjust the rate in dollars, and in a process of stabilization, and with an honest price, it will be obvious that the interest rate in pesos is still negative in real terms, which could be adjusted with the rate in dollars, and that at the same time allowed us to liquefy the paid pressures. And meanwhile, we continued to consolidate a fiscal balance, where they began to remove the paid passives from the balance of the central bank and began to go where they should have always gone, which was to the treasury, because in the end, those paid pesos arose from having generated the fiscal deficit, from having financed it with monetary emissions, and that or another window to get it out by paying taxes, so that the fiscal problem became a problem of future inflation. And that is also interesting, because nobody said how to solve it. When the answers, when we raised this, were absolutely laughable.
Some so-called anarcho-capitalist libertarians accuse Milei of increasing the public debt and the money supply. What he did was recognize the debt that was on the central bank's balance sheet that should have been on the Treasury's balance sheet.
That is why I am grateful for the comment of some analysts saying, my law devalued. If the gap was 200% and the net international reserves were negative at almost $12 billion, I did not devalue. That is, the devaluation was already there. That is, it was only a matter of sincerity. But we did not only have the problem of these flown balances, we also had stock imbalances. As I mentioned, we had negative international reserves at about $12 billion. We had debt in the central bank between the zero and the dividends caught at about $50 billion.
So now that we've seen that the deep state media has lied about Milei's economic policies and the results, his warning to Trump is that they'll do the same thing to him. The two obvious things that they'll do is the deep state media will say that unemployment increased under Trump and the economic activity fell. Trump should get ahead of this issue by making it clear that he only cares about private payroll employment and he only cares about economic activity in the private sector. Government spending and government employees are parasites. They do not actually add to the economic activity. Trump should also audit the National Bureau of Economic Research. They've proven themselves to be political actors, not an independent agency. They pretend that they're a private company, but the reality is they're almost certainly funded mainly by the Federal Reserve and other government entities. They've become a socialist propaganda outlet. They've consistently lied about the unemployment rate. And when there were 2 quarters of negative economic growth under Biden, they refused to call it a recession, even though that's been the standard definition for over 100 years. Trump has the potential to be the greatest president in over 100 years. In order to fulfill this potential, he needs to not get derailed by the deep state socialist media outlets. He also needs to cut spending in the U.S. so that there's no current deficit, and he needs to reduce the number of government agencies at least in half. And strangely enough, if he's going to fulfill his potential, he has to, like Milei, get rid of the central bank, that is, the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is the ultimate deep state entity, and if he doesn't get rid of it, all his efforts will be unwound fairly quickly.
¡Afuera!